Welcome to Health IQ, a podcast from the Coy County Health Council. In this podcast, we are exploring a variety of health topics that affect our community and probably yours too. We are not professional podcasters, but volunteers that have a passion for wellness. We will share practical ideas and resources for people with limited access to services, and we have some fun tips to help you and your family stay healthy and well. Increase your health IQ as you listen to our members as they talk and share with experts and others about the health matters that matter to you.
Thank you for joining us today as we examine healthcare miracles that have made or eliminated many diseases in the United States and around the world too. At the table with me today is Joyce Runyan, and I am Brenda Bishop. Our film crew today is Patricia Crook and Bobby Hockaday.
Yay.
Our world and our families have changed, especially recently, and there's abundance of information, and much of it is of questionable reliability. There are many conspiracy theories about many things, and vaccines are included in that. Many people are uncomfortable with the information from the government because they're feeling it's sort of politically motivated. Even before the pandemic, we were seeing cases in the United States of diseases that had almost been eliminated coming back, like measles and mumps, because parents were fearing information put out in the media by small groups of well-known people. Today, we thought it would be worthwhile to take a look back into history and discuss the impacts vaccines have made on our lives. So we're going to go back to the 1800s when life expectancy was low. 36 years.
Oh my goodness.
Consider that. 50 years of most of us lived 50 years longer than they did then.
Wow.
The rate of child mortality was incredibly high. Most didn't make it to 2 years old, and parents dreaded many diseases.
Oh, I'm sure.
One of those was smallpox. Smallpox is spread through respiratory droplets and coming in contact with bedding of somebody who has smallpox. So if you think about way back in the 1800s, we had many generations living in small homes.
Yes.
And we didn't have washing machines.
Running water.
And running water.
Restrooms.
Restrooms,
Oh,
all those things.
Yeah.
We had chamber pots.
Yeah.
Things like that. The virus would, you would be infected with it, but the smallpox would actually start about 2 weeks. Symptoms would start about 2 weeks after infection.
Wow.
And 3 weeks after that, you would start having scabs all over your body. And you were contagious from the time you started showing symptoms until the scabs were gone.
Wow.
So it was a long disease. About 30% of the people who died or contracted it died. That's a lot. A lot of people if you think about it. In the 20th century, so that'd be the 1900s and up, about 300 million people died of smallpox.
That's a lot of people.
So way back in the 1700s, Dr. Edward Jenner started experimenting by vaccinating his own child with a vaccine he created from cowpox. He published his findings in 1798, and after that, Dr. Benjamin Waterhouse began his research and modifying, and he began using the vaccines on his own family. He was able to publish his results, and by 1855, so that was 55 years, smallpox vaccine became required to enter school in the first state of Massachusetts.
Well, I'm sure as a parent of a small child, it was a really good alternative to get this vaccine instead of watching your children die. So I can see why it was a requirement.
So this was the very first vaccine. Other states began to follow. And by 1980, so I mean, that's what we can remember 1980. By 1980, smallpox was eliminated not only in the United States, but worldwide.
That's amazing.
That
And a very
is-
good thing.
So it has, smallpox was considered one of the most deadly diseases at that time.
Well, I'm sure.
So-
And such a long-lasting disease as well.
And so now
especially
we
in those
don't
close
worry
quarters.
about it.
Yeah, it's
And we
not an
don't
issue. Yeah.
vaccinate for it anymore either because it's been eliminated.
So that's a really wonderful story about how vaccines have helped us, not only in America, but in the world as well. So another issue that we had with vaccines are rabid animals. And before 1885, anyone who was bitten by a rabid animal, you were going to die. That was just pretty much that. There was no other way around it. But Dr. Louis Pasteur, and that's a name we're familiar with, he tried injecting a series of vaccines that he was developing into a young boy, and the child lived. So that was an amazing breakthrough because before that, there was no hope. So rabies is extremely deadly, and it's spread from people to infected, from people to people, from infected animals. And it's usually through a bite in the saliva. So in the United States, it's usually bats, it's coyotes, foxes, raccoons, and skunks. And in our underdeveloped countries, it's mostly stray dogs. So it used to be that once a person was bitten and they showed signs that they would expire eventually. But Brenda has been sharing with me that now, once you get bitten, you can do what?
If you get bitten and you know the animal, you can take the animal for testing. If you know if they've had a rabies shot, then you're fine. If you don't know the animal, you can go get a vaccine at that time. So this is a vaccine that's called like a post-vaccine.
That's really interesting.
And you get it between the time of being bitten and before symptoms show to prevent the symptoms.
Wow. So if that ever happens to you, go right away.
Yes.
Go right away.
And I hear they're painful because it is a series, but
Yeah.
it's still...
It's better than dying for being
Yes.
bit, definitely. So that's really incredible. I've never heard of doing a vaccine after the fact. So that's amazing.
So whooping cough is sort of the next one that popped up. And whooping cough or pertussis is a highly contagious respiratory infection. And this one's not been eliminated, but it is because it is still an issue with especially our babies. This cough is so severe that it chokes away the ability to breathe.
Wow.
And therefore, many babies die and young children die. So, we've seen posts that, please don't kiss my baby on social media. And that's such a true thing because as adults, we might have this small cough and not realize what it is.
Yeah.
But we could be giving it to this young baby. There is a vaccine that was developed in 1914. And, it became licensed in 1914. I think it was developed a little before then. And that helps prevent children from getting this. And now they have started giving it to pregnant women.
To pass immunity through.
To pass immunity to the baby. And the other thing is they're discovering that whooping cough or pertussis is also very dangerous for our senior population. So they're recommending our seniors get that extra
a booster, so to speak.
Yes. So in 1948, it was combined with a diphtheria and a tetanus shot. So they all became combined into one, which is the DTP, a shot at the time, which is probably maybe what we first had. Diphtheria is caused by a bacteria, that creates a powerful toxin that causes damage to body tissues. So over time, early symptoms were similar to a cold, sore throat, loss of fever, but then it could really mess up our nasal tissues, our larynx, all kinds of other issues. And it was sort of in our waste products and proteins related to toxin secreted. So that's how people got it, is through secretions. So that was sort of what diphtheria was. And tetanus, I thought I had something on tetanus, but tetanus is...
tetanus is a disease of the nervous system, and it's caused by a bacteria. So it produces 2 exotoxins, and the early symptoms are lockjaw. I think we're probably most familiar with that. And then the other one is that it causes problems with stiffness and swallowing, and later symptoms can be severe muscle spasms and seizure-like activities. It's a severe nervous system disorders. So generally between 10 and 20% of tetanus cases result in death. And though the fatalities are more likely if you're older than 60 and among people that have not been immunized. So this is one that you also need like a booster on. So that you should get again
So
every
all
10
three
years.
of these, if I remember correctly, now we give the small amounts to our babies in a couple different doses.
And now it's called a DTaP instead of just DTP because one has changed. I think
one is a more updated type of vaccine. I think it was the
acellular pertussis is what it's for.
Yeah.
So
now we get that, but we're also asking our seniors to get this vaccine, and we when they go, I think as teens into school,
that's usually one that's a booster for them.
It's a booster for that.
Tetanus is definitely every 10 years.
And people who work around dirt and metals are encouraged to get a booster as adults.
So that's this has been just really interesting because these are a lot of diseases we've heard about, but we may, because they're not very common anymore, to know actually how they affect you. So I think this has been a great thing to just even discuss.
Yes.
So polio was another one that was really serious and devastating for families. They would get serious symptoms that affected the brain and spinal cord. It could be meningitis, which is also a really bad thing. Depending on the type of virus, they could have paralysis where they couldn't use parts of their body anymore, weakness in their extremities, arms, legs, or both. And depending on the type, it could lead to permanent disability and death. So polio was a devastating disease. And there were lots of people that died because it affects the muscles that help them breathe. So Bobby was mentioning that Rotary has been really involved with helping get polio vaccines throughout the world. And so it's not as common as it used to be. And in some other third world countries, it's not as common there either. As Americans, we enjoy a lifestyle that's really disease-free as opposed to a lot of other countries that don't have that. So that's something that's really important to remember. So before polio became a vaccine, there were several epidemics in 1948 and 55, and a lot of people avoided crowds. They avoided public gatherings. They didn't go to sports, to fairs, to swimming pools, just because they were worried about their families getting polio. At St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, many people with polio were treated in an isolation ward. And some of them were placed into large machines that were called iron lungs to help them breathe.
I remember seeing old TV shows with iron lungs on them.
And so that helped those people whose breathing muscles were paralyzed. And they helped them breathe, and they may have helped them live a little bit longer, but unfortunately, most of those people also passed away. And it was Dr. Jonas Salk and his colleagues that developed the polio vaccine. And in 55, that was licensed and distributed, and that's really helped the spread of polio in industrialized countries. And it's considered eliminated in North and South America. So that's another good story.
I know people who are, of course, much older now, but who were affected, who have paralysis in partial parts of their body, or were not able to walk and have to use the crutches and things like that.
I hadn't thought about those in so long, where you had the little arm braces and and I actually know a woman, probably a little bit older than me, who is in our community that uses those.
There's
aids.
a couple of people in our community that have lived through polio.
So, and that's a good thing. And now that vaccine's available to help us all prevent that.
Yes.
There's one at the Historical Museum. Iron lung.
Oh, we do have one at our historical museum, an iron lung. So.
If you are interested in going to see what an iron lung looks like, you may visit our Tucumcari Historical Museum. In 1918, there was a flu pandemic or influenza pandemic. Yeah, and it was caused by a new strain of virus that came in called H1N1. We've all heard those names. I mean, there've been a lot of those H1 whatevers. People were at the time asked to isolate. All businesses were shut down, similar to something recently. And people who had to go to work were asked to wear masks to try to keep it from going. It lasted 2 years to 1920, and over 550 deaths were in the United States and over 20 million in the world. And 550,000, did I say
I was thinking, 550, it's got to be more.
And so I was thinking about that. Well, compared to recent times, that doesn't sound like a lot, but our population at that time was probably a whole lot smaller than it is now. And I didn't look up to see what percentage of the population that was. So in 1918, the Mayo Clinic became the first to develop a flu vaccine and start working on trying to get that done. Dr. Edward Rosenau was the inventor, and they began giving serum to people in that community around that hospital for free. That's how they tested this serum to see if it was working, and it did. They noticed major drops in the number of people contracting the flu. So that was our first flu vaccine, and then they kept researching through the 1930s and 40s. And but during that time, it was pretty much limited to military that they gave the vaccines to. And then we had another pandemic in 1957.
Oh,
another flu pandemic. And about 1.1 million people died around the world, 116,000 here in the United States. And so in response to that, since they had been testing these, they started recommending in 1960 that everybody get, or most vulnerable populations, especially those at high risk, get the flu vaccine. So that was who they were targeting, was mostly high risk people. And then we had another pandemic in 1968. And then the bird flu pandemic happened in 1997.
I remember the avian flu.
Yes, I remember that too. And so that's why those recommendations started coming, that we start vaccinating yearly for what they're guessing would be this current strain. We had another little pandemic during 2009, caused about 61 million illnesses and not quite so many deaths because we have also better treatments. And then we have our most recent pandemic. So currently, everyone 6 months and older, it's recommended that you have a flu vaccine every year, and that began in 2010. just to try to prevent some of that.
So the next vaccine that we're going to talk about is chickenpox, which is varicella. And for the longest time, there was no vaccine. This actually came into existence when my children were young. And usually when somebody got chickenpox, everybody was quick to let my kid come over and play with your kid so that they can get exposed to this and we can move past it. So as a homeschooling parent, I was out of that school loop of my kid has chickenpox. So I was kind of happy that this vaccine was available because we always missed out on my kid has chickenpox. And so my children really never did have chickenpox. And it's not, it's an inconvenient disease mostly. It can be severe, but if you get it as an adult, it's really a lot harder for you to recover from, and it's just a lot harder for your body and can have longer lasting implications than just some potential scarring. So this was something that I was really happy that they had available, and I actually had my children did do the chickenpox vaccine, and now it's really not something that happens like it used to.
Right.
And so that's been a definite change with our school culture.
Well, and if you think about it, it was hard for teachers, and because
Yes.
it would spread through a classroom, but it wouldn't. The first ones would get it,
and it would take time,
all time, and so you just through your household and everything
Yes.
else. And I can remember I got it in high school.
Oh,
and I missed 2 weeks of school,
yeah,
and so that was it was pretty hard.
yeah.
So the other advantage of so if you have chickenpox as a child, your chances of getting shingles is much higher as an adult.
It's higher?
Higher, yes, because that virus is still circulating.
Yes, that's right.
Through
It still lives in
your
dormant.
body.
Yeah.
But there is some evidence that getting that chickenpox vaccine
Might help.
reduces your chances of getting shingles as an adult. So that's another little bonus.
I would be cautious with that one just because of the time chickenpox came out as a vaccine, the varicella virus came out. And usually shingles becomes an issue when you're 50, 60, so you're a little bit older.
But not always.
Not always, definitely, because I had it in my 20s and it was horrible. But, and I did have chickenpox as a child. So I think there just needs to be a little bit more time with that for the statistics to show that
Right. But
that is a trend.
that's what
That's the hope.
Early statistics are showing that those people who are adults now that are in their 50s that got this as the trial vaccines group are not getting shingles. So
that's good.
I thought that was interesting when I was
you don't
looking
want
that stuff up
shingles, is
the
what
other
I'll tell
day.
you. Yeah.
So measles is another childhood infection that's caused by a virus. Once it was quite common. People had that. It's also called rubella. Measles spreads easily and can be serious and even fatal for our small children.
So rubella is something separate from measles.
Oh, rubeola.
Okay.
Rubeola.
'Cause your cheeks would get all-
I misread my notes.
Okay.
Rubeola.
Okay.
Well, death rates have been falling worldwide. Children receive this vaccine. The disease has killed more than 200,000 people a year, mostly children, worldwide. Mm-hmm. Because, but in the United States, it's not as big an issue. This vaccine was developed in 1954.
Okay.
And tested for many years. And then it was changed a little bit in 1963 to become more of a, like you were saying, made from live vaccine. Mm-hmm. And more effective. And then, let's see, by 1971, it was combined with measles and mumps and rubella. And by 2000, it was considered eliminated in the United States.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. And mumps is that big lump people would get in their lymph nodes here, or their glands. And it was very painful, left it very tender. It made it really hard to swallow. And the complications could spread to all kinds of other tissues,
Ew.
including the reproductive systems.
Uh-oh.
And so as it affects children, it would affect them throughout their lifetime because of all the complications that affected the other tissues. So the first vaccine was developed in 1967 for that. And at that time, there was about 162,000 cases occurring each year. And now we're down to about 600 cases occurring per year in the United States. And then, let's see, also, I didn't know if I wrote down the world stuff. It's usually, now that it's combined with the MMR, it's a 2-shot thing, so you get one earlier and one a little bit later, and you're good to go. And rubella then is a contagious viral infection known by the red rash that you were talking about on the face and also on the arms and chest. It was also called German measles. I remember hearing it as German measles or 3-day measles. It has mild symptoms. However, it's a serious problem for unborn babies. So when a pregnant mother gets rubella, that is very hard on the fetus. And so that's why it's important that you're vaccinated before you become pregnant, because it can be very fatal to that child. There was about, in 1969, the first vaccine for rubella was licensed, and we had about 47,000 cases occurring yearly. And now we have about 152 cases yearly in the United States.
Huge drop.
Yes.
Huge drop.
Big changes caused by
vaccines. Yeah,
yes.
By having your vaccines. So this has just been a brief overview of some of the vaccine history of a lot of the vaccines that a lot of us are familiar with and probably have had. So, but we do want to say, for accurate information for yourself and for your family, you always want to talk to your healthcare provider. I always say you are your best healthcare advocate, and you need to make sure that you have a good relationship with your provider and that you guys understand each other and what your goals are for that healthy life that you want. CDC is a good place to go for good information. There's some other reputable websites that you could go to, and just always, with a grain of salt, listen to all the opinions that are out there. And I know you all are intelligent people. Use your mind, think about these things, contact people that you trust, and work towards a healthy lifestyle for yourself.
So we do have a food for thought quote. And I think it's on the top of that page that you just had, because I must have torn in the wrong spot. Ooh. And it's vaccines are...
I don't think I see that one.
Are the tugboats of preventive health.
She knew where to look. The tugboats of preventive health.
Yes. So I thought, well, that's sort of interesting because, a tugboat pulls that big ship. Mm-hmm. And so vaccines sort of keep us moving.
And all of these vaccines that we talked about were huge worldwide problems for our children, for adults, affecting our lifespan. And so I'm sure it's been a process, and it's been a long process of pulling us towards a healthier shore.
Yes.
out of a raging sea of viruses and potential death. And so vaccines have done a good part in our history, and they've helped us to live longer lives. When you look at 36 to now, what's our average? 70s, 80s?
Yes.
That's a huge increase in benefit towards the people that are here that we're living with, that we love, that we want to spend as much time as possible with.
And that life expectancy is not all because of vaccines.
No, I mean, there's other things that walk along with that. But having optimal health and staying as healthy as you possibly can, the duration of your lifetime, is going to affect your quality of life and the ones that love you. So, vaccines have done some good work for us.
Be sure to come back for our next episode, and we enjoy visiting with you today.
Hey, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Quake County Health. And if you would like to contact us, you can email us at
healthiqpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks to our guest contributors, Joyce Runyan of the podcast committee. Our host today was Brenda Bishop. Podcast crew, Director Robert F. Hockaday. Producers were Robert F. Hockaday, Joyce Runyan. Video crew was Patricia Crook. Music provided by David Morris.
This podcast was made possible by a New Mexico Department of Health Better Together grant. Additional information about today's topic will be on the Health IQ blog located on the Quake County Health Council's website at www.qchealthcouncil.org. Be sure to follow the Quake County Health Council on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Quake County Health. If you have ideas for future podcast topics, be sure to reach out to us at healthiqpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today. This podcast was created solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for advice from a healthcare or mental health professional.